4-year-old boy is made to stand in a crowd and watch a man be executed. He doesn't cry, he doesn't look away, he has no reason to. As far as he understands the world, this is simply what happens to people who break the rules. He has never seen a television. He doesn't know the world is round. He has never heard the word love used about a person, and won't understand what it means for another 20 years. He knows 10 rules. He has them memorized. The first one is that anyone caught trying to escape will be shot. This boy was not sent to prison. He was born in it. His mother was a prisoner. His father was a prisoner. He was born a prisoner, in a camp the size of a city, for a crime committed before he existed, by relatives he never met. The North Korean government says this place does not exist. It does. You can see it from space. And for 23 years, the only human being ever confirmed to have been born inside it and lived to adulthood was this boy. His name is Shin Dong-hyuk. When he finally ran, he ran across the body of the man dying next to him. And that is not even the part of this story that people argue about. Because there's something this boy did, at 14 years old, that he has never forgiven himself for. Something that got 2 members of his own family killed. He'll tell you about it himself, later. And when he does, half the people watching will stop trusting him, and the other half will trust him completely. Hold on to that. We're going to come back to it. To understand Shin, you have to understand that he was not a prisoner who lost his freedom. He was a person who never had any to lose. He was born in 1982 in a place called Kwanli-so No. 14, Camp 14. It sits in the hills about 50 miles from Pyongyang on the Taedong River. It is enormous. Estimates put it around 50 kilometers long, holding tens of thousands of prisoners, wrapped in electrified fence and patrolled from watchtowers. And it is not a place people are released from. Camp 14 is what's called a total control zone. You are sent there to work until you die, and if you are born there, you are born already sentenced. Shin's crime was decided before his birth. In North Korea, there is a practice called guilt by association. When one person is judged an enemy of the state, their punishment extends to 3 generations: parents, children, grandchildren. Shin's father had 2 brothers who fled to South Korea after the Korean War. Shin never met them. It didn't matter. Their choice put his whole bloodline in the camp, and Shin inherited a sentence for a decision made decades before he was conceived. His parents did not marry. They were assigned to each other. In Camp 14, a man and a woman cannot simply be together. The only way a child is permitted is as a reward, for prisoners who work hard and, more importantly, who inform on other prisoners. Shin and his older brother existed because their parents had once been useful enough to earn a few nights together. So there was no family in any sense Shin would later recognize. He shared a room with his mother and barely knew his father. He was taught, from the beginning, that loyalty to the guards came above loyalty to any person, including the 2 who made him. He believed it completely. That belief is the hinge this entire story turns on. And to understand how a person could believe it that completely enough to do what he did at 14, you have to understand what the camp did to him first. It starts with hunger. The defining fact of Shin's childhood was not violence. It was hunger. He ate close to the same meal 3 times a day for 23 years. Corn porridge, cabbage, and salt. If he made a mistake, his portion was cut in half. He was hungry enough that when his mother wasn't looking, he ate her food. She beat him for it. He did it again anyway. He did not think of her as someone to love. He thought of her as a competitor for calories. In the moral world of the camp, that wasn't cruelty, it was arithmetic. The only meat he ate came from rats he caught himself, insects, whatever moved and could be eaten. Once, he found undigested corn kernels in cow dung. He washed them off and ate them. He would later describe it as one of the best meals he'd had in weeks. Not because he'd lost his sense of disgust, because hunger had beaten it. He went to a school of sorts. The teacher wore a guard's uniform and carried a gun. The lessons were obedience. And one day, in that school, a teacher searched the children's pockets. In the pocket of a 6-year-old girl, he found 5 kernels of corn. He made her kneel at the front of the class. He picked up a wooden pointer. I'll tell you what happened to that girl in a moment. But first you need to understand why not one of the other 39 children in that room did anything to stop it, including Shin. Because in Camp 14, the girl was guilty. She stole food, and everyone in that room knew stealing food could get you killed. To them, watching was not cruelty. It was the rule working exactly until she collapsed. Her classmates carried her home. She died that night. And Shin, watching, felt that she had earned it. He didn't question it. He had no other rule to compare it to. That is not a monster. That is a child who has been shown only one law since birth. Remember that when we get to what he did at 14, when Shin was 13, he heard something he was trained his whole life to report. He was staying at his mother's place. In the night, he woke and heard voices from the kitchen. His mother and his older brother were talking. His brother had gotten into trouble, and they were planning to escape. Shin's first instinct was not fear for them. It was the rule. Rule 1. Anyone who knows of an escape and fails to report it is shot. So he reported it. He went to a guard, and he informed on his own mother and brother. He did more than that. He signed a statement. He later said he expected to be rewarded. More food, maybe a better position. Instead, the guards suspected he was part of the plot, and they took him to an underground cell and tortured him. Over a coal fire. He has the burn scars across his back for the rest of his life. Sit with that for a second. He did exactly what the camp had spent his whole life training him to do. He followed the rule. He reported, and it didn't protect him. There was no safe choice available to him that night, only the illusion that following orders would keep him alive. He was held underground for months, and then he was brought out to a clearing, to a crowd assembled to watch, and made to stand near the front. They brought out his mother, and they hanged her. They brought out his brother, and they shot him. Shin watched both, and for years afterward, the thing he felt was not grief. It was anger at them, for breaking the rule that got him tortured. And that's the thing he can't forgive. Not that his mother and brother died, that he was the one who turned them in, and that when it happened, he felt nothing but resentment toward them. It took years, and freedom, and the outside world, before he understood what he had actually done. And when he finally tried to tell that story to the world, it triggered the exact controversy that follows him to this day. We'll get there. First, how does a person actually get out of a place like this? The answer arrived in the form of a stranger. Everything changed because of one prisoner who arrived when Shin was in his early 20s. His name was Park Yong-chul, and Park was not like anyone Shin had ever met. Park had lived. He had been someone in the outside world, educated, well-connected, had studied in Eastern Europe, had eaten in restaurants, had seen cities. He had fallen from the top of North Korean society all the way down into Camp 14. And when the two of them were assigned to work together, Park did something no one had ever done for Shin. He described the world. He talked about cities, cars, television, countries beyond the fence. And Shin, by his own later account, mostly didn't register any of it. What he registered was the food. Park described grilled chicken, the whole bird, the skin crisp, nobody stopping you from eating all of it yourself, pork, beef, rice so white it looked like snow. And the detail that actually broke something open in him, even poor people, Park said, ate like that most days. Shin had never once in his life finished a meal feeling full, not once in over 20 years. So it wasn't the idea of freedom that moved him, it was the idea of a full stomach. He would say later that for the first time, he wanted something. Not hunger, not fear, want. And what he wanted was food. And the fence was just the thing standing between him and it. Park didn't just plan an escape with him. Park gave him a reason to want one, and it happened to be the only reason that had ever made sense to Shin his entire life. You cannot run toward a place you don't know exists, but you can run toward a full plate. So the two of them made a plan. It was almost certainly going to kill at least one of them. It did, just not in the way either of them expected. January 2nd, 2005. Shin was 22. He and Park were assigned to gather firewood on a mountain slope near the camp's outer fence. It was winter. There was snow on the ground. The nearest guard tower was a few hundred meters away, and there were long gaps between patrols. The fence was electric, high-voltage wire, strung in strands, carrying enough current to kill a man instantly. The plan was simple, and it was almost certainly going to fail. Wait until the light faded, get to the wire, get through it before anyone saw. As dusk came, they moved down toward the fence, pretending to stack wood, and then they ran for it. Shin slipped in the snow and fell. Park reached the fence first. Park pushed his body between the lowest two strands of wire and tried to force through. The current seized him. It killed him in seconds, and his weight dragged the bottom wire down against the snow, opening a narrow gap where his body now lay. Shin crawled over him, over Park's body, through the gap it had made, using the dead man as insulation against the wire. He almost made it clean. At the last moment, his lower leg slid onto the wire, and the current burned him from knee to ankle. The scars never left. But he was through. He was on the other side of the only barrier he had ever known, and he got up, and he ran down the mountain into a country he knew nothing about. He was the first person ever confirmed to be born in a total control zone and escape it. And he had no idea which direction China was. He was free. He had also never bought anything, never lied to a stranger, never seen money change hands, and didn't know the world was round. Freedom, it turned out, was going to be its own kind of ordeal. Freedom, for Shin, did not feel like triumph. It felt like a foreign planet. He had escaped the camp, but he was now loose in rural North Korea, one of the poorest, most controlled countries on Earth, with no money, no documents, and no experience of how normal people behaved. Now we have to talk about the part people argue over, because in 2015, Shin Dong-hyuk changed his story. His account had become one of the most powerful pieces of testimony ever produced about North Korea. A best-selling book, Testimony at the United Nations. He had become, more than anyone alive, the face of the camps. And then North Korea released a video attacking him, featuring his own father, disputing details of his account. Under that pressure, Shin went to his biographer and admitted that parts of the story were wrong. The changes were real. Some of what he had placed in Camp 14 had actually happened in a second camp, Camp 18, which was run less brutally. The timeline of his torture shifted. The escape attempts he'd described happened differently than first told. Critics seized on it. If he changed those details, what else was false? Some argued the whole account was now worthless. Human rights organizations estimate that between 100,000 and 200,000 people are held in North Korea's prison camps right now. Most of them will never be named. Most were sent there, like Shin, for the crime of being related to someone. Many were born there and will die there without ever seeing the fence from the outside. The little girl with 5 kernels of corn in her pocket has no name that anyone recorded. Neither do most of the people still inside. So here's the question I want you to sit with. A man tells you the worst thing he ever did was get his own mother executed, and later admits he told parts of his story wrong. Does that make him less believable? Or does a man willing to confess that about himself become the most believable witness you could possibly have? Tell me where you land in the comments. I read all of them. And if you want the escape that happened on live camera, with the whole world watching, it's right here. I'll see you there.